Welcome back to Corporate Fuckery, the show that unpacks the cost of autopilot ambition and what it takes to redefine success on your own terms. Today's guest isn't just shaping the conversation around modern work, she's rewriting the entire operating manual. Roxy Couse is the Millennial Manager the internet actually trusts. With more than 500,000 professionals tuning in to her corporate straight talk, boundary setting playbooks, and You're Not Crazy, the System is Realness, Roxy has become the go-to voice for every high-functioning professional trying to build a career without losing their sanity. She's a Webby-nominated creator, a strategist with a decade of senior leadership experience across startups and Fortune 500s, and a content powerhouse whose work has pulled in more than 100 million views and earned features in Forbes, Business Insider, Newsweek, and every major platform shaping the future of work conversation. But here's what makes her exceptional. She isn't just entertaining the internet. She's equipping an entire generation of managers with skills our workplace should have taught us but didn't. She's normalizing boundaries. She's dismantling hustle culture delusion. And she's building a more human version of corporate life in real time, one viral truth bomb at a time. When Roxy speaks, professionals breathe a little easier, laugh a little louder, and most importantly, remember that ambition doesn't have to mean self-abandonment. Welcome, Roxy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And also that intro almost made me cry.
That's the goal. Your team wanted me to send it over earlier, and I'm like, it will ruin the magic. Please just let me run. I promise I will keep her safe and she will love it. So I'm glad. You come highly accomplished, my friend, and I'm so honored to have you on this season of Powerhouse Women. I've been looking forward to our conversation for quite a while. Let's just dive right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
So first and foremost, I'm sure as you were like thinking about your big career growing up that you were like, I'm going to change the narrative around corporate landscape and be an internet sensation. How did you get into this work?
No, that's so funny. But honestly, I think for most of my corporate career, I was like, I'm just happy to be here. Yeah. I've talked about this in my content, but I didn't grow up with a whole lot. And so even to get the opportunity to work in corporate spaces, literally, I was just happy to be there. And so it took me a really long time to realize, okay, there's some things that are not okay. And when I realized that and had this realization about I need to build something for me because this might not be as stable as it used to be or as it used to feel, that was when I started to create content to have these real conversations about working in corporate, and it just took off.
Yeah. And so was there a moment, an issue, an experience? Like I had one of those earlier on in my career that I blew up my corporate identity and put myself back together. And then all of this happened over the summer. But did you go through something where you're like, wow, corporate life is just not it? Or were you the one that was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be?
I would say there's probably been a few moments where I just realized, okay, something's off from a combination of having bosses that just didn't like me and that wanted to make my life miserable to sitting at home at my coffee table waiting to see if I was going to be laid off when layoffs were happening during the pandemic. I think it's just been a combination of things that have contributed to my nervous system just being a wreck. And finally, I was like, I have to do something different because this is not sustainable.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. And we thought the pandemic was rough going with the layoffs and everything. And we find ourselves, and I talked about this on an episode a couple of weeks ago, but it's 50,000 people at a company at a time losing their job creates a dynamic within the corporate structure that completely ruins your nervous system and the psychological safety at work. And as you think about the people that you are speaking to and know what they're going through, because obviously that's been your content strategy for a while now. I just want people to feel seen, and this isn't just happening to them. Like, how are you navigating this yourself, or how are you encouraging people to navigate it? Because the corporate streets aren't the same. Like, the corporate fuckery has actually only gotten worse.
Yes. And I think it's a combination of things. So me being a manager in corporate spaces, I want to create content that individual contributors, for example, they can see themselves in, and also managers. It's like you contribute to how people feel about work. I've managed people over the last few years that were so scared about being laid off that they would do anything you asked. It was just so unproductive because everybody was just living in fear and you couldn't get anything done. And one, I want to empower managers to understand that you're responsible for these people's careers and you need to take it very seriously. But then also, I'm trying to empower the individual contributors or even those who've been in corporate for a long time that like you things have changed and you have to think about your personal growth and development and think about a career is personal and you need to figure out what you need to do to thrive even if it's not within corporate spaces.
Yeah. And so, what's your recommendation on how to do that? Because I think that is a really confusing theory. Like, it's really like, how do I do that? Or what am I supposed to do? Like, a lot of people out there are like, I'm going to just keep growing and keep learning. And a lot of corporations are so good about do this training or let me, I mean, Microsoft, who I recently left, was like, y'all have to go out and learn how to have a AI agent or write your own AI agent. And let me tell you, it ain't that easy as someone
Mhm.
that was in the walls of Microsoft for 4 years. It's not that straightforward, but leadership has this idea of, oh, we're giving you all the resources, we're giving you all the tools, go figure it out. And so when you try to individuate from that and you're like, but I don't know how to separate myself from this, then it feels really confusing on how to create your own destiny in that space. So what would be your
Right.
advice there?
Yeah, so one of the first this is cliche at this point, but I do believe in the power of building a personal brand. And so I started building my personal brand when I was still working in corporate. I was really nervous that they were going to see that I was doing this thing and then I was going to be fired because of it, but that was more internalized fear because it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I started building my personal brand alongside working in corporate and just being a thought leader in the things that I had been doing for a decade at this point. I'm very good at e-commerce. I'm very good at digital marketing. And so I just
Mhm.
started talking about those things. And that was the launch pad for me to really see that you can create your own opportunities and you don't have to be tied to this corporate job if it's not serving you. So
Right.
building a personal brand was one of those ways that I was able to achieve that. I also believe, and I've held on to this my whole career, is that I've always been in the job market. Even when I've had a job, I've always been in the job
Mhm.
market. I always have the job alerts going. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let me check this out. I've interviewed at places even though I loved my job because
Yeah.
I believe it's so important. For one, it's just practice. And I believe in that statement. If you stay ready, you never have to get ready because you never know what happens. You get laid off. Now your resume is not ready. Your LinkedIn's not up to date. Like you
Yeah.
should stay ready, especially in the times that we're in. And so those are some things that I truly believe in and always networking. Like you should always be thinking about how do you build genuine connection. So when you need to tap that network, they're there. You should build it before you actually need it and that will serve you well in your career.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And I used to have a whole bunch of things that I would do for people because I had to ask them to do things, right? So I used to carry the stick, but I would also offer the carrot in terms of, hey, let's build a relationship. Something that you said that I absolutely loved and maybe never considered before was this idea of positioning yourself as a personal brand inside a corporation. So many of us are looking at the next level, and Microsoft specifically was the worst at this because they delineated in each of their roles and how the levels work. And it's here, check this box, and essentially that equals promotion, right? So we're
Mhm.
constantly looking at that next level of checkbox activities. But when you position yourself as a personal brand inside an organization and you create the reputation and the rapport and the positioning, it likely makes the conversation a lot easier to not think about how you're trying to just achieve more by doing more, but really strategizing how to get what you want by demonstrating that you already embody those skills. Is that kind of your recommendation here?
Right, exactly. And I can tell you from being in an organization where I was building my personal brand, because I had this sort of external influence, I then was started to be on our podcast. I
Mm,
Because I did social media, I was then put over content and social
mhm,
media.
mhm,
I had this one TikTok go viral about it was about Target's loyalty program a couple years ago. I was
mhm.
just saying, Target, you need to do something about this. This is not great. I worked at an organization that had a product that catered to digital marketers. That TikTok got picked up in Business Insider, which is great for PR when you work for a company that does digital marketing. So
Mhm.
all of it just works together. And I was very
Yeah.
intentional about the topics that I talked about. My platforms have evolved so much since I don't work in corporate anymore. I'm sure
Yep.
we'll get to that. But I played the game while I was in the corporate space and was building this personal brand and was getting the company was on board with me doing this work because one, it worked both ways. It helped the organization and it also helped me as someone trying to build something on my own.
I love that. And I would love to go down the rabbit hole in just a minute. I just have one other question about what you do today and how you're helping people really craft this own narrative outside of working within wholly the corporate structure. But I guess I would really love your opinion about how corporate life, just based on being known as the millennial manager and what you've come into in the leadership, because it's different than what I came into, right? When I graduated and started my career, like I would say it was a little bit more old school. And so everything has evolved. But from your perspective, how did corporate life get here? Like, how did everything get so fuckery-y? I mean, I have my own assessment, but I would love to hear your perspective on this too.
I Things have definitely changed over the little over a decade I've been in corporate spaces. I'm not 100% sure how we got here, but it does feel very not people focused,
Mm.
more just profit focused.
Yeah.
Earlier in my career, honestly, I didn't know of a layoff that was happening. It just wasn't a thing. People were let go because of poor performance or like bad behavior or things like that.
Right.
But I did not know of anyone who was a top performer at an organization
Hmm.
getting laid off. It just didn't happen. And I think that's what also made me super nervous because I've always prided myself on being a top performer. I'm going to do what it
Yeah.
takes. I'm an eldest daughter too. So
Eldest
there's
daughter
that
too. Yes,
aspect of it.
100%. It is not falling down on my watch.
Exactly.
You
I'm
can
gonna
believe
work
in me.
hard. Yeah, but when you see people that work very hard that have been in organizations for so long,
Mm,
those people are not being valued. That's what changed. I feel like in most people, even skill set,
yeah.
we say AI is the future, but I know people that work in AI that have been let go. So it just I think that's what's happened. Like people aren't valued anymore.
Mhm.
And that's why we're here at this point.
I would agree with you. And there's something that has gone down about treating people and line items as a cost of goods instead of an actual contributor to the growth and the betterment of the organization. And working at Nordstrom, I think this has been really difficult for me to sit with because we were all treated like this big family. And I mean, it was highly dysfunctional in some ways. But like you knew the brothers, like everybody was connected and you trusted that you showed up, you did a good job, you helped meet goals, you would be taken care of. And it's the exception now to keep someone around for that, not the rule in terms of these layoffs. And it's mind blowing. And I guess when I think about voices like ours, I really truly believe that the more people here at the manager level and above, that they have direct impact on how they're going to change the direction and the landscape within the corporate environment, like that they can take more ownership of that.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you do and who you serve. And I know a lot of people are going to know you, and I love that for us. But I would also love to know, like, what you do in your business and how you are really changing this inside corporations from the inside out.
Yeah. So about 3 years ago, I started creating content. And it was so funny because I didn't start creating content talking about working in corporate or I was actually trying to have this outlet from working in corporate. I needed like a hobby. And so I was creating this content about just being a homebody, which is so funny, but I had been working from home for so long
Mhm.
and I just needed something else. I was dealing with the internet went wild when I called it, when I said work from home fatigue, which is not a new term, but people were mad. They were like, "You're ungrateful." I'm like, "No, you can have fatigue even though you work from home." So I was talking about being a homebody, and then I just my platform started growing from there. And but one day I decided to talk about how performance alone will not get you promoted,
Sure.
and I realized that in a conversation with my boss, who told me that there's nothing else you need to prove. We're just not ready to promote you.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it was like a light bulb went off in my mind. I'm like, okay, so I've been working hard and I just thought was always told you work hard and you get where you need to go, but not the case. But that happened so late in my career that I feel like, oh my gosh, I've wasted a lot of time trying to climb this ladder when it wasn't the hard work that was going to get me there. But I talked about that and that video went viral and that kind of kicked off me talking about working in corporate and having real conversations about working in corporate and not just the fluff. Like I talk about like the corporate hard truths and things that people don't say and because it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I've actually gotten messages from people. They're like, I love your content, but I can't like it because other people I work with follow you. So
I've
that's
had
that.
people say that to me too. They're like, "I can't tell you my story because what if my coworker finds out that I shared this story and then I'm going to get in trouble at work?" And I was like, "Possibly. And we all need to know that we're not crazy navigating these walls, that we're not built for our
Exactly.
humanity." Yeah. Uh,
Exactly.
and so I want to dig in because there was actually something on Threads this morning. This woman, and I speak mostly to women. This season specifically is about powerhouse women who are trying to navigate this, that are
I
like
love
us eldest daughters, right? That are like,
you
I'm
see my
here.
mug?
No,
It
was
was never addressed.
amen. Amen. But it's so this woman was like, I got passed up for a promotion that I had worked for 3 years by this younger man that got it instead of me. And I was told that I was too, the submissive wasn't the word that they used, but it was something like I was too quiet. And I was like, you know what? Women are damned if they do and damned if they don't. You're too quiet, you don't get it. You're too noisy, you're too aggressive.
Mhm.
What is the right temperature here? Like the three bears. Where are we going to get to the right level so
Right.
that it doesn't take 3 years of trying to kill yourself? Because most companies, it used to be that checkbox where you're like, oh, you are very clearly demonstrating. Let's promote you. Now, especially at Microsoft, it was like, we only promote 2 people a year. And you have been performing at that next level for 16 years. And then at some point, we will have the good grace to promote you.
Mhm.
How, especially as we think about these women who are dedicated and their identity is, I do want to do a good job. I do want to get ahead. I do want to continue to grow. And then they're just squashed like a bug when promotion time comes.
Mhm. It happens all the time. I think the biggest thing that I've learned in that aspect is one, it's not really about you. It's not about anything that you've done wrong. It is the system
Yep.
and it is not set up in a way that promotes thriving. So the pie method is a really great example of performance. It's only 10% of how you're rated when it comes to promotions. The other is like your image and your exposure. Who likes you? Who are you like kikiing with at the happy hour? Are you even going to the happy hours? Because if
Yeah.
you're not, that's probably not a great idea when you think about your promotability, which is so silly, but it's like this whole game equation that has to be played. And you might rise to the top if you play the game correctly. And that is just unfortunate.
So this might be my Zennial. I'm a Zennial. Yeah, it might be I've never heard of the pie method. Drop it like it's hot. I got to hear it. 10% performance. I got that. And then I
Yes,
got
yes.
image.
So it's
And then I got something else.
yep. So
Uh-huh.
performance alone will not get you promoted. Performance is only 10% of how you're viewed when it comes to performance. So people that you work really hard and you're like, why am I not getting promoted? It's because all you did was work really hard.
Yeah.
So the other aspects that tie into the pie method is image. How are you perceived? Do people like you? All of those things. So you have to be likable and you have to engage with the right people
Mhm.
because exposure is the other aspect of are you getting the exposure to the people that are in the rooms making the decisions on whether you'll be promoted or not. Are you speaking up in meetings? Those things. And the image and the exposure makes up like 90% of how you're viewed in terms of who gets promoted and who doesn't. So those people that we can't stand because they're always talking up in meetings and they're always hanging out with leadership. Those are the people that get promoted.
Yeah, in my day, those were called brown nosers. And what I love about this, first of all, is I can see generationally that we got a skew here somewhere. Okay.
Mhm.
So a lot of the work I do has to do with subconscious reprogramming and helping you change the thoughts that you're thinking so you can create more of what you want in your life, your career, or your business. And if we have women like us who are eldest daughters who nobody has ever said, hey, girl, the pie method exists and I need you to start thinking about this, you know that any eldest daughter or high achiever or whatever definition type A listening to this, they would be like, I'm going to go nail the pie method. I'm going to go figure that out. I am committed to pie. I will do any pie from here to Timbuktu. But nobody was like, hey, some of us had figured that out naturally throughout. But I just think generationally, we were always taught by our own moms. My mom is like, oh, I'm Norwegian. I could do anything. I could lift a house if I needed to. Like, I'm strong enough, I could do anything. And I'm like, yeah, me too.
Mhm.
But when you start thinking about image and you start thinking about some of the other experiences and exposure, like, those are really big and just as important and require a level of emotional intelligence that a lot of people and I'm not trying to be an ageist here, but it's like the Gen X, they weren't here to worry about anybody. They don't give a shit about exposure. They
Mhm.
don't. They're like, I know what I know and I'm good at what I do. And I trust that about them. But I can just see generationally speaking here, like where we got off kilter and that there's some difference generationally in how we're even approaching our work.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's so funny about the pie method was I was told that method by one of my white male peers
Mm.
who was like, Roxy, this is the thing. After he had gotten promoted,
I'm big on the E and I'm big on the I and not so
it's
much on the
like
P, but it
he's
makes
like, Roxy, you
sense.
work too hard. You need to chill out a little.
I'm like, could we make a course on this? Could we do some subconscious work on this? Could we get people thinking different thoughts here?
You
Because it's
know.
really true. Instead, we're like, oh, we ate Bob and Joe and Sal. We don't want to work with them. So we don't care about our exposure and we're willing to give that up at the cost of our ability to move up the ladder.
Right,
There was another thought I had that kind of left
right.
the station here, but this conversation is so good. Please talk about that because your people need to hear that. Like I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And it's
Yes,
not my method. I can't remember the exact who came up with that method, but yeah.
it just makes a lot of sense. Like it just is like, oh, yeah, like why aren't we teaching this? But instead we have conversations around you need to meet company values. Like I had
Right. Live the
probably,
values.
yeah, be a values girl or boy or person or folk, whatever you are. And as long as you demonstrate these really great values, like good
You're
job.
gonna rise to the top.
And it doesn't work.
Yep.
I don't know why I feel like asking this. I'm highly intuitive. So when I was in corporate life, I didn't used to be intuitive at all. And then I went through like this whole spiritual awakening. Are you woo-y at all? Like, do you believe in any of the energy things? I know I'm putting you on the spot and I can edit this out if it doesn't go anywhere, but I'm just curious.
I don't think so.
You're not?
What?
Okay.
No. Like crystals?
Like astrology or human design or,
Oh,
anything like that.
not really. No. No.
Not really. Do you know anything about your astrology? I happen to learn.
I'm an Aries.
That makes sense. That tracks. Do you know anything
Mhm.
about Aries energy? I
A li
became an astrologer when I thought had
tell me
escaped.
more, but I think is it being type A?
Well, it's charging ahead with messy action, right? Like Aries are like they're gonna fuck around and find out. They are like we're just gonna go. We're
Yeah.
going. We're not asking questions. We're not gonna get too many details. We're just gonna go. Now, I am your complement. I'm married to an Aries. I am your complement in that same realm of being Capricorn, but I'm gonna have the perfect plan, and I'm gonna just
Mm,
go for standards that are required to get us where we want to go. Now, something that really, and I can send this to you after if you're interested, that I discovered about astrology because I was like when I rage quit my job in 2019, I was like, I'm out. Like I can't do this. I was not built for this. I also
mhm,
had a Me Too moment, which was annoying. But I went way down the astrology hole because I was looking for answers that you could not find inside a boardroom. And
mm,
I discovered my moon sign And I can
Oh,
send you a little bit about your moon sign if you're interested.
I
But
would love to hear.
it really has to do with like your emotional patterns and how you think about your own energy and how you actually are showing up. Because I'm actually a big believer that some of our trauma shows up to work with us every day. I don't know how you
Oh,
feel
yeah.
about that.
I completely agree. Yeah.
And so how do you coach as a millennial manager? Like, how are you advising people to navigate everyone else's projection of their childhood trauma through the halls of corporate life?
It's so hard. I think even one, your upbringing has a lot to do with how you act in corporate spaces. So, actually, a real example, I had a boss who, when I started, she was wonderful. We got along so great. And then all of a sudden, she was not great. And one day I sat her down. I was like, I don't know what the problem is. What did I do? And she said, yeah, the problem's with you. Ask you how your weekend was, and you don't share. And then she goes on this long tangent about me not sharing details about anything outside of like the work itself. One, as a manager, that's one of those things I talk about. I don't care how your weekend was. That is, I don't care what you do on your
It's
PTO
actually an
time.
HR violation if we really want to talk about.
That is your time. But I do realize, so like I grew up in my mom's Black, like a Southern Black woman. Like there are things that like you don't tell people your business. What happens at our house
Yeah,
stays in
you're
our house. Like
private. Yeah.
that was drilled in my head as a kid. So like even me oversharing about my weekend, I would just never do it. And that has a lot to do with the way that I was brought up. You just don't overshare with people that are not your family.
Right.
So, and I try to teach, there's boundaries. Like we have to be able to establish boundaries, and managers have to be secure enough in themselves to realize that it's not about you. It's not all about you. But you have to adapt to how to manage people, and everyone needs to be managed the same. Don't expect people to want to be managed the same. And as a manager, you have to have that flexibility to meet people where they are. So yeah, that
Isn't
was
that
just
interesting that she was likely looking for something to have more connection and she was interpreting that likely as just rejection, rejection, rejection? And that was all of her own stuff that was just instantly being projected back on you?
which was wild. I had no idea. And I'm not the type of person that like, you're like, how was your weekend? I'm not going to say, fine. No, I'd be like, oh, it was great.
Yeah.
I had a good time. That's me explaining. No, I'm not elaborating, but
You're like, I could have gone on a shopping spree at Target or I could have traveled to Paris. Either way, you're going to know it was fine.
oh, it
That's
was
it. That's
great.
all
The
you're
weather
getting.
was nice. That's me.
Just to tie it back to astrology. So for me, like I was always told, Lauren, you take things too personally. I had one leader say, hey, I didn't put this in your performance review, but you take things like really hard. I had another leader when I worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing. She's like, you need a tougher shell. You need to not take things so personally. And I was like, and so then it was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And part of that was, first of all, I was caring a lot more than I should have. Second
Mhm,
of all, I was taking on responsibility because that actually does come with my childhood trauma of
mhm.
everything's my responsibility to fix and take ownership of. So when I discovered astrology and my Pisces moon being like the sensitive little precious thing she is, highly intuitive, but very precious in how she feels about everything. Then
Mm.
I was like, oh, like here's this inner narrative. And it's just a tool, Roxy. I'm not trying to sell you woo woo anything here. But it's just a tool to be like, that's really interesting that like we can look at essentially the energy that we're showing up in some of these characteristics. It's kind of like disc method or strength finders, right? Like it just gives you a different perspective about
Oh,
yourself.
yeah.
And those types of things, especially in the workplaces, are really helpful to see different perspectives on where you have opportunities to be like, maybe I don't want to show up and take so much ownership of everything.
Mm.
But instead of my manager being like, you take everything too hard, he should have been like, hey, I'm curious. Like, tell me why it feels like you have to own all this shit all the time. Like, what
Yeah.
is it? There's not that generation, there was never curiosity. It was always just the judgment of, hey, you're not doing it right. And this
Right.
generation, and I believe the path that you're helping to forge is we got to be curious about what people like, where people are at, what they need, and how we treat them like humans.
Agreed. Heavy on the treating people like humans aspect.
Mhm.
That's the biggest thing for me. I'm not treating you like a number. You will be treated like a human who has a life outside
Mhm.
of this place.
Mhm. Yeah, and so when you think about these high achievers, these powerhouse women that are coming up in the ranks, establishing themselves, now using the pie method. I know that's going to be on your content soon, at least I hope it is. I fantasize that it is. What is your advice for them about how they help create this future for us of bringing their version of humanity back to corporate life?
Don't be an asshole.
Solid advice. I love that advice. Everyone needs that. I actually think it's harder to be an asshole than it is just to be kind, personally.
I agree. And you fall into these behaviors of people around you. I've worked with groups of, for example, one of my former colleagues, she said that people called her a bulldog because she just get it done by any means necessary. And direct reports didn't like her, but leadership loved her. And I just think that there are many different ways to get people to activate and do the things that you need to do to move the business forward. And you don't have to be an asshole to do it. You don't have to be rude for people to follow you. You don't have to be manipulative. Like you can be human and just realize that like everyone this is not their life. This is work and they have other things that they do outside of that. So treat them as such. I also don't think people realize that the trauma that you experience in the workplace when you are under a bad leader or within an organization that isn't supportive of you as a human being, you carry that with you for years. You may never get rid of that trauma that you experience. And I don't want to contribute to that. So I hope that you don't further contribute to that. It's so important. So
I couldn't agree with you more. And the shame I felt for leaving my job at Nordstrom, I carried 5 years of shame. I couldn't post on LinkedIn to save my life. Like when that trauma goes down, we think that it's us. We think that we did something wrong. We think that I used to say shit the bed of life. I'm like, I blew it all up. I have no idea how I did that, how I got there. But in the end, like it was the best thing that happened for me. I can say that after 5 years of healing. But it's really true, the ripple effect of the psychological warfare that goes on in the halls of corporate life. You don't even realize it. And part of that goes back to the family trauma and what you experienced as a kid and what was normalized. And most people can't differentiate the two, and it just feels common. And again, like their responsibility.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, how do you see the future of corporate life as millennials start infiltrating the senior leadership ranks and really start shifting the narrative? Because I believe that millennials have a very different, as we've discussed here today, a very different perspective about people, about what's right. I use quotation marks there, but like how they want life to be in terms of relationship with their work. How do you see things shifting?
Yeah, so there's a stat that a majority of managers today are millennials. I think when people call me the millennial manager, but my last role in corporate, I was a senior director of customer marketing. So I had climbed the ladder pretty far,
Yeah.
but I still relate to the person that's earlier in my career trying to figure it out. There's so many things that I wish someone had told me, but I just see this evolution of leadership and how we show up at work. And I think it's more authentic than it has been in the past. People are tired of games. They want real talk from a company perspective. I know it feels like in recent times even when we're talking about layoffs, it is framed as we need to reduce fixed costs, but fixed costs is people. And it just doesn't like all the corporate jargon and the speak. People just want real talk, real conversation.
Yeah.
I do see this evolution of people being multifaceted in that you have your job, but you also have the side hustle. You're doing these other things to feel whole, but also for security and your future. We do want to be able to retire one day. So
and for creative outlet, I think a lot of the women I work with are really looking to have more of the mission-driven, purpose-filled life.
Yeah.
And they're not finding that in the halls of corporate
Right.
America or corporate life. And that is what is most squelching to them. So they wake up in their 40s and they're like, it's great that I can present on whatever PowerPoint or create a relationship, but what is actually filling up my cup of destiny and how I want to leave this life and the legacy that I want to think about? And that's where, unfortunately for us women, it costs more. It requires more sacrifice to have a side hustle and a full-time job in leadership and kids. And let's just add aging parents in there in the circle. So it's like our responsibility sphere gets a lot bigger. And yet we're willing to sacrifice more because we just want to feel that sense of satisfaction that those other things that we're doing and managing don't actually bring to us.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also, I think one of the things that I have felt for so long is guilt to focus on myself. Like I've job topped in my career, but I always felt guilty. I'm like, I don't want to be selfish, but we do have to be selfish. This is the perfect time for us to be selfish and to focus on the things that we need to thrive. And I think that is so important because at the end of the day, it's we are responsible for ourselves. You got to do what you have to do to thrive. And there's self care in being selfish and taking care of yourself.
Yeah. What is your message for powerhouse women that really struggle with that concept? Like they're really banging their heads against the wall because they know that they need that intuitively. And they're just tapping that voice down and they're like, shut up, I will do it. They're trying to put it off in the future. Oh, my next holiday is coming. Oh, when I have my PTO, and yet their PTO numbers are like going through the roof. And that day never comes. And then all of a sudden, here comes crisis. And crisis is the thing that knocks you on your ass and makes you wake up. So, what is your advice for powerhouse women out there who keep putting off what they know they want, but will actually make them better leaders, better employees, and more fulfilled humans?
Yeah. So, one, focus on things that bring you joy outside of work, and it will change your life. And focusing on those things that bring you joy outside of work shorten the gap between thinking and doing. So
Mhm.
you should try to think of one thing maybe every week that is going to bring you joy and check your joy meter. Like, did this make me happy? Yes, keep doing those things
Mhm.
because a lot of times we do feel selfish for doing things that make us happy because maybe someone else isn't as happy about these things. But yes, you have to do things that are going to bring you joy. And that's how you have this very fulfilling life and career and fulfilling life outside of the office,
Yeah.
honestly.
It's how your identity differentiates, bifurcates from it just being the 40 or 60 or 80 hours you're working in your corporate structure. And if you just thought, and you're listening right now, but that takes more time, that takes more energy, I don't have this, I don't have that, then I challenge you to think a different thought because the cost of subscribing to that I don't have enough time model without learning how to clear your schedule and make space for yourself is a lot higher when the cards all feel like they're going to fall at the same time.
I agree.
Yeah. Roxy, I have adored this conversation. Thank you so much for all your time. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share about where people can find you? I know your Substack is super popular. Any ways to work with you? I'm happy to highlight that here.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Threads is at Roxy Couse. I'm also on LinkedIn and I do have a Substack newsletter. I send it out every Monday and it's called That's a Monday Me Problem.
Hmm.
And you can find me on all those places.
Beautiful. Well, from one powerhouse woman to another, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
And that's where we're landing today, inside one of the most important truths powerhouse women rarely hear in corporate life. You are not a job description. You are not a level. You are not the boxes someone else decided you needed to check to be considered ready. What Roxy made unmistakably clear is this: building a personal brand isn't self promotion, it's self preservation. It's the individuator, the line in the sand, the place where your work life ends and your life begins. When you know who you are, what you stand for, and how you want to be seen, you stop waiting for corporate to validate you and you start validating yourself. And that's the work I do every single day. I help women rewrite the internal narrative that tells them to shrink, overwork, or prove themselves into the ground. I help you upgrade the beliefs that determine what you think is possible. Because when you shift the subconscious story, the external story follows: promotions, pivots, power, peace, all of it. And here's your permission slip: laminated, gold foiled, and delivered with love. You are allowed to stop checking the boxes and start positioning yourself differently. You are allowed to embody the next level of now, not when someone decides you've earned it. And you can have your pie and eat it too, but only if you understand the game you're playing and choose to expand beyond it. Your personal brand isn't just a vanity project. It's your leverage, your clarity, your protection, your path out of survival mode and into self-designed success. If today's episode lit something up in you, go follow Roxy everywhere her brilliance lives, especially her Substack, That's a Monday Me Problem. And if you're ready to build that internal foundation, the identity, the emotional clarity, the subconscious power, you can step into your next level with ease instead of pressure. Book a free consult with me. The link is down in the show notes. Until next time, take a breath, trust your gut, and remember, your ambition isn't the problem. Your conditioning is. And you're here to rewrite all of it. I'm your host, Lauren DeGolia, and this is Corporate Fuckery.